Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to history subjects for Form 2 topics. So today we are going to have the topic 1, which is social and economic development and production in pre-colonial African societies. Your instructor today is me, Madam Nasra. So what I need is your cooperation. I want you to listen attentively so as we can reach the success. Let's start. Social organization and production. This topic talk about how African society were organized, how we lived before the coming of colonialism. That's why we call the pre-colonial African society or pre-colonial Africa. Before the coming of colonialism, how was their development? What were their major means of production? How their leadership system, their ruling system, how they were. So there is overview or short about the topic. So let's see the social organization and production. Economic production in pre-colonial African society can only be analyzed when we look into models of production in pre-colonial African society. Basing on the economic production, it is analyzed based on the mode of production. This consists of the productive force and relations of production. It is consists of productive force and the relation of production. Example, the mode of production existed in the pre-colonial African society were communal model of production, feudal mode of production, slave mode of production. So when we talk about the modes of production, we're talking about communal mode of production, feudal mode of production, and slave mode of production. So let's see the meaning of social organization and production. Starting with the social organization. Social organization can be defined as mode of production existing in a given place at a given period of time. Social organization can be defined as mode of production. The mode of production existed at a given place at a given time. That's why it is in history subjects about the series of events based on period or time. Mode of production involve productive force and human labor, instruments of labor, economic activities, and objects of labor. Productive force, human labor, maybe or instruments of labor, what they were using during the production. Economic activities, what activities involved during the production, and objects of labor and production. Now we see the types of social organization and production which existed during the pre-colonial African society. The first one is communalism or communal model of production. Communal model of production refers to the varied ways of human beings collectively produce the means of subsistence in order to survive and enhance social being. It is collectively produce the means of subsistence. It is for subsistence in order to survive. So they are producing in order to survive, for food and enhance social being. Therefore, in this topic, we shall fully analyze the characteristics of various modes of production in pre-colonial African societies. So, the following modes of production were existed in the pre-colonial Africa. So, as I said before, communal model, it was the mode of production which aimed to enhance the survival for social well-being. It's not for, as nowadays life may be for selling, for business purpose, but it is only food, for food in order to to succeed the survival of the human being. Now, what is community mode of production? It was the first mode of production exists in pre-colonial African society, and it is divided into two. It was the first mode of production, the first mode in which the human being passed through. This was divided into two types. The first one is primitive one, the primitive communalism, whereby it was the first mode of production through which all societies passed was primitive communism. It called it primitive because of the low level of productive force, and communalism because there was no exploitation of man by man. It was primitive. It is called the primitive communalism because the first primitive used the low level of knowledge, low level of productive force. But why communalism? Communalism because the whole society involved in production, and there were no exploitation of man by man. The only peculiar characteristics of primitive communalism that was there are no exploitation of man by man. Also, historians try to convince or proceed to convince others this mode of production existed for much longer period than any other modes, as it ranged from emergence of man more than 1 million years ago. It was only one mode of production which existed for a long period of time in the history of man. The next is advanced communalism. During that era, man advanced in his tools through various discoveries like iron tools. It is because of this technological advancement that's why it came to be known as advancement of communalism. So as the days goes, the man started to use the other advanced tools like the iron. So the coming of iron made the human being to advance in the use of the in the way of production. Though it was the communal way, but the tools used was in somehow advanced. So now we see the characteristics of primitive communalism. First, low level of production. With crude tools like stones and little knowledge, man hardly mastered his surroundings. He managed to get basic needs such as food, clothes, and shelter. Due to low level of development in science and technology, people produce the food for their day-to-day use, hence there are no surplus production. First, it is use the low level of production. At that time, there was low level of production due to the use of crude tools like stones. At that time, human beings used the stones in production. As nowadays, you can see people use hand hoes in production, others use tractors in production, but at that time, man used just stones for production. The tools which was very crude. So man managed to produce just a little production which he used for foods, just for the basic needs of that time, just for food. So he used it to produce day to day. And there was no surplus production. Maybe that we can produce this, then you can keep this for further use, no? Or we can produce this for food, then the surplus can be used for maybe for selling them, maybe for business, or for further use. Maybe I will use it maybe next year or the coming years. So the main and the very crucial characteristics, very notable characteristics of this mode of production is that low level of technology. The next is collective ownership. Members of this community jointly owned the major means of production, including land, tools, and animals. The clan leader headed the member of the clan. However, communal societies were not satisfied. As a result, all commodities produced were shared equally for there was no exploitation. Collectively ownership. What was produced, it was owned by the majority. Be it land or tools or animal, they were owned by the whole majority. The clan leader headed the member. Though there was clan leader who headed the member, but the communal societies were not satisfied. They are not satisfied due to the use of local tools like stones. Also, the commodities produced, they were shared equally. There were no exploitation at that time. The next characteristics is absence of specialization. People were obliged to do all the jobs, including making tools, hunting, looking for food, preparing shelters and clothes. The division of labor was based on gender and age. Men hunted and collected food, while women were responsible for cooking, taking care for young, sick, and old people. There was no specialization. All people involved in production, like making tools, hunting, and so on. The division of labor at that time was based on the age and sex. As they tell us that the men were responsible for hunting and collecting food, while women were responsible for cooking, taking care for children and older people maybe, and sick people. The next one is full democracy. All decision making was arrived at all adult member of the group regardless of their gender. All decision making was arrived at by all adult members and the group regardless of their gender. It is this mode of production in which full democracy was applied. Generally, people lived together according to blood relations in small groups by tracing their origin from the same ancestor. Each group was separated from other by large tracts of land. So the mode of production, people lived together based on the blood relations and in small group by tracing their origin. People of the same origin who were related in blood were involved as a single clan or single family. So as the day goes, human beings experienced themselves or encountered themselves in transition. They transmitted from the primitive communalism to advanced communalism. As you can see that the human being or the mind of human being is not static, it's dynamic, tend to change days after days. So as the day goes, the human being minds changed due to different reasons. So they changed it from primitive communalism to advanced communalism. During primitive communalism, all the time man largely depended on nature so as to increase his labor productivity. The next is domestication of animal and plant, or emergence of Neolithic revolution in late age of Stone Age. This was the greatest revolution made so far, the first time by man. During this period, Neolithic revolution, where the human being started to use the iron. This made them to transmit from where they were using stone, then transmitted it on the using of what? Of iron. So this made the great revolution. At the end of the day, man encountered himself in transmitting from the primitive communalism. As you can know, you can't compare stone with an iron in the production. So iron is sharp while stone is crude. So even in the production, you can see the one who was using iron may succeed a lot of production compared to the one who will use the stone or even the tree. The next is development of permanent settlement. Even with nomadic pastoralists or shifting cultivation, the area of operation became limited as the number of people increased due to the Neolithic revolution. The human being passed the period when he started to have the permanent settlement. At the primitive communalism, there were no permanent settlement, especially those pastoralist society who were shifting from one place to another, maybe for those who use to have cattle, or those who use to cultivate and shifting cultivation. Now they started to have the single place and settle due to the Neolithic revolution. Hence, the production increased with the population following the permanent settlement was inevitable. Since there are enough production and the population increased, then willingly they decided to have the permanent settlement. The next point why they decided to change, what was the change? We can see that land continued to belong to the community, by agriculture became the major economic activities. Land continued to belong to the community, by agriculture became the major economic activities. As we know, during the primitive mode of production, all major means of production was owned by the community. So also here, and in the advanced communalism, land continued to be under the majority of the society. Also, what difference here is what agriculture became the only major economic activities. That's why at this transition, it was just like transition. That's why this period, it is still called communalism, since land, or not only land, major means of production was owned by the whole community. Now we see the next part where human being transmitted from advanced communalism to feudal mode of production. As I say that there was communal mode of production, then feudal mode of production, or feudalism, then slave mode of production. So they transmitted from the communalism, first from primitive communalism, then advanced communalism, then they transmitted to feudal model of production or feudalism. African societies were not static, but they underwent transformation, which were influenced by the environment, climate, soil fertility, the growth of population, and the increase of productive force, all which paved the way for the new mode of production. Others say that the human being brains is not static, where the African societies also were not static, underwent transformation. They changed from one stage to another. Therefore, due to the influence, maybe environment or climate, soil fertility, growth population, and increase in productive force, this made them to transform themselves from the primitive or from the communal mode of production to feudal model of production, which we call feudalism. Such factors, those factors, soil, climate, population increase, advance in productive force, all those factors cause the society's transitions from communalism to feudalism. By the 19th century, some societies were practicing feudalism. However, groups such as Tindiga of Tanzania, Khoisan of Kalahari maintained their communal model of production. A lot of societies changed from the communal model of production to the feudal model of production. However, there are some societies who stayed, who assumed or who remained at their communal model of production. The common notable societies in Africa is Tindiga, who found in Tanzania, and the Khoisan, who found in Kalahari Desert. Some societies used in area with good climate and fertile soil. Such societies included Mandika and the Yoruba in the forest of Savannah region, Bunyoro in Buganda, Ankore, Toro, Tuts, Haya, Hutu, and Yoaha of East Africa, as well as Zulu at Dengon in South Africa. Example of those societies who underwent the transformation from the communalism to feudalism are, as I said, those at the previous. Reliable rainfall and fertile soil allowed the expansion of agriculture and the cultivation of permanent crops such as banana in Buganda. So, due to the presence of reliable rainfall and fertile soil, forced the farmer or the human being to advance in production, as they had a lot of crops like banana cultivation in Uganda, also in higher society. So the cultivation of permanent crops lead to the growth of permanent settlement, which ensured surplus production. So the one common notable characteristics of feudal model production that there was the presence of surplus production. That's why the human being decided to settle at the single place to have the permanent settlement. The advancement of science and technology led to the discovery of iron. From iron, people made strong and sharper tools than stone tools, which increased the rate of production. So, due to the advancement of science, It was the period when the human being decided to use the iron tools, which increased the production compared to the stone tools. So the growth of population led an increase in food production and the standard of living. Population increase resulted in a shortage of land and caused the overcrowding. This also led to the rise of highly centralized state that developed the standing armies, which later carried out the constant raids. Shortage of land and its increase in value contribution to the development of productive force, since they were conditioned to produce everything in small areas. So the growth of population led to the increase of food population and the standard of living, and the population increase resulted into the shortage of land and the cost of overcrowding. This also led to the rise of highly centralized states that developed the standing arms, with the later carried out the constant raids. So shortage of land also and its increase in value contribution to the development of productive force, since they were conditioned to produce everything in the small area. So you can see how the society, how human being experienced these things. So he encountered himself to change from the first mode of production to the feudal model of production. In general, we can say that such factor threatened the communal mode of production and led to feudalism, since land was privately owned by people. The factor I mentioned before which acted as a threat to the communalism or communal model of production. So the feudalism emerged where land was owned by people. The same certain society or certain person can own land. The one who has power can own land, and others have no land. This created classes of landowner and those who were landless within the community. So during the feudal model production, we can see there was landowners and those who were landless with no land. The organization of labor was then dictated by land controllers at the expense of the landless who worked for landowners in order to be paid. The organization of labor now was under the dictatorship. The landowners forced those with no land, with landless, to work on their farms in order to be paid. Also, the distribution of production was not equal, as land controller took the highest share for themselves. So people tended to rent the land in order they can get place to cultivate. Then at the end of the day, they have to pay some of their production to the land owners, and few remained was under those who were landless. Furthermore, societies underwent a transformation from communalism to feudalism system due to the fact that some societies became strong and conquered weaker societies. Furthermore, societies underwent transformation from communalism to feudalism system due to the fact that some societies became strong and conquered the weaker societies. As I said at the introduction, the feudalism emerged due to the increase in production, increase in population. So some of the society which was strong conquered the weak society. So those who were strong acted as landowners, and those who were weak were landless. up to there it will be the short, but I hope that you have understand what is about the feudalism. Now let me leave you with this question: what are the characteristics of the feudalism? If you can pass through these notes you can get, if you have catch me well, it will be easier for you to tackle this question. So thank you for watching. Bye bye.